soaked up solar power during the day. And so we can cut the number of batteries by not charging the car at night, by figuring out how to charge it in the day.
Yeah, there's all sorts of parameters that the future will be different than today, which sounds silly, but for most of human history, changes happen pretty slowly. So we're facing really accelerated changes. I mean, even COVID, apart from everything we're talking about here, it's hard for me to believe that companies are going to go back and pretty much demand that everybody show up at work and not allow people to work from home for part of the day anyway.
Gary, it's Art Black. I know, say, I've got electric vehicles, and my house is about 40 years old, so the total power from the street is, I believe it's 120 amps. So it's a fairly modest number, and I've got buried utility here in this area, so that when I think about trying to go to an all-electric house or upping the amperage, I've got a fairly basic problem, and then I would have to go dig up the street in order to bring in a bigger drop. And I kind of wonder if bringing in a more robust grid to existing housing stock is going to be a fairly hard barrier in all of this.
I don't know. I'm in the same situation you are. Actually, I have a 100 amp
Okay.
box in my house, and I believe the actual physical work doesn't mean tearing a lot of stuff up, but they because there's conduit. So you have, if the conduit's big enough, and I can't say whether mine is or yours is,
Yeah.
and all they have to do is pull thicker wires through the conduit. And then PG&E gets to tell you how much that quote costs.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people tell me the $5,000 or so that I've been told is really inflated, but I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
Tom, you have your hand up, but you got to unmute.
Sorry about being muted. I was looking up a link. I'll try to put a link in the chat for the folks who are struggling with how to electrify on the smaller panels. There's a couple of different Zoom talks that I've given about how to do it. And it just means essentially making a couple of careful choices. And then we put a spreadsheet calculator at the Redwood Energy site where folks can look at how to do it. We'll also be publishing a retrofit guide in a couple of weeks. It'll go online for free, so you can take a look at that. But they're just several techniques of not choosing the highest power, highest amperage equipment, and then everything will fit on the panel. But if you choose, big sloppy equipment, like a heat pump water heater that also has 30 amps of resistance power, then you end up with conflicts. So it's doable at 100 amps or 125 amps.
Well, I'd be glad to review that. Somebody was actually just today telling me about an installation where the person actually has a switch where he or she can switch between powering their dryer or powering the garage where the EV outlet is. So there may be some ways around this. Anybody else have questions or thoughts? Suds, you got to unmute.
Hey, Gary, thanks for the talk. I told you I was going to be on tonight.
That's right. But I got introduced. I've introduced him several times as a future councilman in the city of Santa Clara. And he's a very persistent individual because he ended up losing those elections. But it looks like he's got this one. He's got 2/3 the votes after 80% plus of the votes are in. Go ahead, Suds.
So I just wanted to say that if I've read somewhere that if you drive fewer than like 9,000 miles a year, then it's actually cheaper to use Uber for every one of your rides. And if you use Uber Pool, if you drive fewer than 6,000 miles, then it's cheaper to use Uber in all cases, non-shared. So it's actually very expensive to own a car. People don't realize that. And then there are also comparisons out there that it's actually cheaper to own a Tesla than a Toyota Camry if you consider the 5-year costs. I have an electric vehicle, a Ford Focus Electric. I've had 0 service except tires in 6 years of owning that car. So, and then finally, if anyone wants to upgrade your panels, there are rebates. There are actually grants available through the CCEs to upgrade panels.
Well, that's interesting.
And there's even rebates available for low-income people to buy used EVs. So you can get a used Leaf for about $8,000 or $9,000. And if you're low income, that car is essentially free after all the rebates for low-income people.
Well, you got is Molly here?
Yeah, I'm here.
You want to tell them about your Leaf and its
Yeah, so
driving range?
I got it 9 years ago, and my range has gone from like what they say 80 to 100 to now like 40 to 50 is what it says. So it's dramatically reduced. And the problem is there's no, well, if you want to spend $8,000, you can get a new battery through Nissan. But if the battery prices are going down, why is it $8,000? My question.
Right. The thing about it is the Leafs have very poor thermal management. So their batteries degrade more than other cars. And that's why used Leafs are so cheap. But the average person drives fewer than 50 miles a day. So for a lot of people, 50 miles is adequate range.
Any other comments out there? People want to?
Yeah, I've got a question, Gary. I had trouble getting into the meeting, and so I missed the video and most of the talk. Is the replay going to be available?
Well, we have a Facebook website. If you it'll take probably several days to do a little editing of the video, but that should be there. And you can email me. I actually get the emails from the Sierra Club. I think it's called Guadalupe. If you go to the website, Guadalupe at Sierra Club or loneprieta.sierraclub.org. I mean, my email is just glatchow, if you can remember that, GLATSHAW@gmail.com.
Okay.
This is Sean.
But give us a few days to edit the Zoom and get it up.
I'll arrange with Gary to get it up on our YouTube channel as well.
Oh, that's right. We do have 2 channels. That's right.
The way I'd usually do it, I post it to YouTube first, and then it goes to Facebook via a link. Usually I chop it up into parts, like depending on how long it runs.
Yeah, between the
Because it's easier to
two.
manage.
Okay,
It'll be on Facebook and YouTube.
okay. So anybody else want to offer suggestions or hopes for the new year?
I can say one more thing about the Nissan Leaf batteries. There's a gentleman on the East Coast that's coming up with low cost replacement batteries for the Leaf. And he's going to have an installer in Berkeley and also in San Jose that can put them in for you. And if you want, I can information, and that way you'll have it.
That would be good. I mean, I don't think Molly is alone in her frustrations. So,
Well, he's got two things. One is just replacing the Leaf batteries with ones that are in better condition. That'll be first phase. And the second phase is to actually do like they do with Tesla, where they actually make a different kind of battery out of the smaller cylindrical cells and replace the original Leaf batteries with those newer technology. Anyway, the name of the company is called Phoenix, F-E-N-I-X, and I'll send you that information via email.
That'd be great.
okay. I'm just looking at the chat. Okay, a lot of information here. So as he said, Tom has posted what, a YouTube.
Yeah, that link there is a 30-minute YouTube from Redwood Energy Partners recent retreat, and in it I go over the kind of the AMP diet methods and what we're changing, and then one of the researchers there goes through several different case studies in different climates. Where we've calculated how big a house they can put on a 100 amp service and still be charging a car and powering all the heat pumps and things like that. But what we're finding from our calculation can power a car charging at 16 miles an hour plus a house easily up to 2,500 square feet. So, it's just a matter of choosing good heat pumps, choosing a good water heater that does not have big resistance elements in it. The other thing that really helps is using either a heat pump clothes dryer, or the best thing yet is the combined washer dryer machine. It's a single machine that you put dry, dirty clothes into, and then you don't come back and visit it. But 3 hours later, you get dry, clean clothes out of it. And so it saves about $10,000 worth of floor space in the Bay Area. And then but also it frees up the whole dryer outlet. So that dryer outlet could be used for the new EV, or whatever else you want to be doing.
Okay. Well, it's almost like these different devices were like the days when computers were getting better and cheaper, and you always wondered, should I go wait another couple of months?
If only I had bought the Apple stock instead of the Apple computer, I'd be a rich man.
By the way, Tesla has now the highest market value of their shares of any company, including Toyota. Toyota used to have the highest capitalization from their stocks, but I think Tesla's actually floating like twice the Toyota, and I don't know. We'll see if he can keep it up. It's like a lot of things. He's got the engineers working longer. He's got billions of miles of experience, where General Motors and Leaf, they don't have anything like that.
So Gary, there's another question in the chat.
Yeah.
So for driving vacations from California to Minnesota or the Midwest, would you recommend an EV, a PHEV, or a combustion engine? And how about driving to New England?
Well, I would plan your trip very carefully if you go in an EV. PHEV, plug-in EV. I mean, my Volt, that's what it is. So I can go over 300 miles when it's gassed up and charged up. So, and of course I can just travel forever just on gas. But if you're going to take an EV, I'd plan it carefully.
Get a Toyota Prius. If you want to have comfort, get a Chrysler Pacifica hybrid.
Do you have that?
Yeah, they're using, Google is using, or Waymo is using nothing but Chrysler Pacifica hybrid.
I tried to talk my wife into getting that, but she didn't want to.
Very comfortable, convenient, and good gas mileage.
Yeah, I think that one goes 30 miles or so on electric.
If I may throw in my 2 cents,
Sure.
I bought my used Tesla 5 years ago, and the first thing my wife and I did was hopped into it. And in the first 2 years, we put on 60,000 miles, hopped into it, drove to Florida, crisscrossed the US coming back. A year later, went to Nova Scotia, crisscrossing the US and Canada. A Tesla is absolutely an effortless long distance vehicle. And if you get an old one, you don't even pay for the fuel.
Were you able to charge at Tesla charging stations?
I crossed Texas before they ever had superchargers, for example. Electricity is everywhere. So I just have a whole bunch of adapter cables. RV spots are everywhere. Nowadays, it's a non-issue. Superchargers are everywhere.
Yeah.
Be happy to answer questions.
Well, maybe that helped.
What was your longest charging time that you experienced?
I have no idea because on the road, the timing. Let me try to explain this. When you're doing a long distance drive, let's say you want to do 700 miles in a day in a Tesla. You start off in the morning with a full charge, no matter where you are. You've plugged in overnight somewhere, and you have a full charge. By the way, I've never charged my Tesla to 100%, and only a couple of 3 times over 90%. So you start off with a full charge. You drive for a couple of hours. You're heading for a supercharger, because by the time you get there in a couple of hours, you got to go to the bathroom anyway, grab a cup of coffee. So the name of the game is whenever the car is standing, it's plugged in. 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, you hop into it, you drive for another couple of hours, you stop for lunch. Invariably, by the time you've sat down, and very often before you even order the meal, you get a message from the car saying, "Hey, I'm ready. Where are you? I have to go move the car, get it away from the charging station." And you rinse and repeat. So I don't know what the longest, I've never paid attention to it because I never fully charged the car. I never wait above, 80%. I may take it to maybe 85% if I'm eating lunch. The rest of the time, I just let it sip a little bit and then keep going.
My friend drove up from Silicon Valley to Oregon to watch the solar eclipse. He said he had to wait for 8 hours to get his turn to charge his car.
That example, I'm sorry, is very poor. That was a very unique situation. My wife commuted from here to Medford, Oregon, virtually for 2 years, going every few weeks. Never had an issue. That eclipse was such a unique event, even gas stations were full.
I agree.
You can ask me about what Scotia situations I had. In Nova Scotia, we set off to go across the Cabot Trail way up north. Drove for most of the day to arrive at a charging station in a little town where the museum, the Sir Alexander Graham Bell's museum is. Baddock, that's this town. I arrived there and had a charging station. I go and I plug in and nothing, absolutely nothing. Deader than a doornail. I went to the gas station that was on the back of, and the guy says, "Oh yeah, it's been busted for a long time," even though PlugShare said it was still going. So, but once again, no problem. I looked, and oh, there are a bunch of sailboat masts sticking out. Having spent a lot of my life cruising, or at least some portion of my life cruising on a sailboat, I simply went down to the boatyard and says, "Hey guys, can I plug in? You got 240, can I plug in somewhere?" And they says, "Oh, sure." And I've got a great picture of my car sitting in a boatyard with a great big boat behind it. They unplugged their vacuum cleaner. I plugged in and walked off to the museum, and came back 4 or 5 hours later, and off we went.
Yeah, it's interesting. Any other late night thoughts? Okay, well, everybody stay safe. And we'll figure out how we'll start the new year off in January with some special events. If nothing else, let's see. Well, we won't. The 20th is after our meeting, but we should have an idea what's happening by then. So thank you all again, and stay safe, and see you next year.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
You're welcome. Good night.
Bye.
Scary.